Interested in real estate? How about wealth? Well, they go hand in hand. And here, you'll learn all about it. Welcome to Be the Bank, a podcast where we discuss and debate the topics centered around real estate investing. Your host, Justin Bogard, shares insights into investing in real estate to create real wealth and passive income for you and your family. He'll share stories of real estate investments done right, walk you through the process of owning a real estate note, and most importantly, educate you so you can be the bank. This is Be the Bank, brought to you by American Note Buyers. Now, here's your host, Justin Bogard.
Hey, it is episode number 12 of season 5 on the Be the Bank podcast. I'm Justin Bogard. Today, Rich and I are going to be talking about just some post-closing processes to be aware of and maybe some timelines that you are unfamiliar with, or maybe kind of set your expectations on what should be. We got some fun little seller finance stories on some successes when they look like they could be failures. So stay tuned. Hey, Thornton. How's it going, dude?
Mr. Justin, pretty well today. Thank you. It's nice and warm outside, and summer is upon us.
Yeah, it's been very dry here in Indiana. It's been so dry. I don't think we've had rain for, I want to say, like 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so now there's some air quality issues going on. There's construction for, so a lot of commercial stuff that's being built around where I live here. So the ground is very dry. So now when the big equipment is rolling through, they're just kicking up dust everywhere and just kind of blowing all around. So like, cars are all dirty and like the air has all got a lot of dust and pollen that's kicked up and it's not able to settle without any humidity. So that we got a little bit of struggling going on here.
So it's really dry. So you're having to put on a moiusturizer. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know when it's going to rain. I looked at the forecast for this couple of days.
I noticed those crow feet. They're starting to come in around your eyes.
Yeah. So I got the brightness turned up so much on the camera. So you can't see it. You can't see my
yes. That's why we do this, right?
Face. Yeah. Yeah. For those of you that want to check us out on YouTube, just go to our YouTube channel at American Note Buyers. You can see the the recording of this podcast as well. This is episode number 12. Brought to you by American Note Buyers. So besides the weather, is there anything exciting going on out there in good old Petaluma, California?
Well, you know what's interesting is the local real estate market just continues to confound me out here, because you look at the stats and they say, oh, things are, San Francisco Bay Area is down by 12% and la la la. Well, we're in the North Bay, okay, so we're still fairly close to San Francisco, and we're on the older side of town, so a lot of the houses are built in the, aughts and the 20s. Markets has slowed down a bit, but we're still getting houses that are going at $200,000 and $300,000 over asking here. I mean, it's just amazing to me that you think that the market would be falling out of the bottom for a lot of these houses, right. But we're still getting, in a lot of instances, and I'm not saying last month, I'm saying last week, over asking $200,000 and $300,000 over asking prices.
That's incredible.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I haven't been paying attention this past week on our market here, so I don't have any updates for you there, but I guess I am surprised to hear that. I'm surprised that it's happening. I think you mentioned a stat to me not too long ago. I want to say it was today when we talked today that you said 40% of the Bay Area is vacant with commercial, right?
Downtown San Francisco, yeah. It's got the highest vacancy in the country. And San Francisco as a city is cruising for Bruisin because of the ripple effect. It's not just the commercial businesses or buildings owners themselves.
Yeah,
it's the hotels that don't have the people to stay in them. It's the sandwich shop on the corner. It's the
right.
It's the shoemaker. It's the guy who repairs your shoes, who people aren't taking their shoes there anymore because they're not down there. They're getting the guy who's at home to do it. So the rollout of that's going to be interesting, and we're just on the very cusp of that, I think.
Little funny side note there. You said cruising for Bruisin, and it made me laugh inside because that's what my mom would say to me when she was mad at me, but she wasn't really serious. She goes, "Justin, you're cruising for a Bruisin."
Yeah.
I just be like,
Well,
"What?"
yeah.
She's like, "I'm just kidding."
Most of my both of my parents are from the Midwest. Of course, you're in the Midwest now, and
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people look at me and go, "Are you from the Midwest?" And I go, "No, I'm a Californian." But I've got Gita, my other half, constantly kids me because something will happen. I go, "Well, jeepers!" I didn't. And she says, "Jeepers, is that the strongest word you've got? Is jeepers?"
It
And my
sounds like
mom used to say that all the time. So
that's from I Dream of Jeannie.
yeah, or something like that. Yeah, you just kind of go, okay,
That's
Midwest.
funny. So you never lived in the Midwest, correct?
No,
Okay. Yeah, I guess if I hadn't known that you were from California, I wouldn't peg you from being California.
yeah. So
Not that being from
so
California has its own moniker to it, but never know.
it does. So tell us about the hidden things that are going on in the back rooms of loan and note buying these days that you're finding.
So what I find interesting is that there are people in the note industry that teach about investing in loans and maybe some processes and kind of how it works, and it doesn't seem to pan out exactly how reality is. Meaning, not saying this in a bad way. I'm just saying this. What is taught in the classroom sometimes really isn't reality, and so you have situations.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, that general in any subject matter, right? It's not just
Yeah.
about real estate notes.
Hmm.
So when you get into the application of the environment and you buy a note, and I'm not talking about, you know, documentation as far as recording stuff, because we've talked about that before, but I'm talking about actually the transfer of service from who is collecting the payment to the new person that's collecting the payment. It doesn't have to be the actual note owner, it can be the third party servicer. So, like, we service all of our loans through a third party servicer. Richard and I do not collect on any of the payments personally or professionally. We always use a servicer. So sometimes we buy or invest in notes that are serviced by the individual that is the bank, and we call that owner finance paper, seller finance, mom and pop paper. So that paper is fun to buy because obviously we get a pretty good discount on that type of paper, but also we do have to make sure that it's set up correctly. So when we get this paper and we go through the transfer of service process, I have to prepare these certain letters that the government or the federal agencies say that we got to send this stuff out, meaning you got to let the borrower know that the note's been sold. Duh, right? It's pretty obvious. And then you also got to let them know, where the heck do you send the payment now? And so they have what's called a TILA, TILA form that goes out. It's the Truth in Lending Act. And it just says, hey, your note has been sold to XYZ company. So expect something from them. Oh, and also they get a second letter that comes in the mail that says it's a good, we call it a goodbye letter. And it's basically an RESPA letter that stands for, I can't remember the exact name of it, but basically it's saying, hey, I was collecting on your note, and now this company is going to collect on your note, and here's the date that they're going to start collecting on your note on. So if you need to make a payment and you have to do it before this transfer date, just make it to me. Otherwise, if it's on this date, then you start using this company. And then the new company that's collecting the payment is going to send out their welcome package, which includes, hi, I'm this servicer. I represent this, the person that owns your paper, blah, blah. So that information needs to be sent out. So oftentimes that process can take a little bit of time. So, for example, we just bought a package of 5 loans for our company. And when I bought those loans, I bought them from somebody that was using not a loan servicing company, but more of an escrow type of company. So that it's almost like a glorified bookkeeping thing, to where they can collect the payments and they know how to collect payments and they do a good job of it, but they're not technically a fully licensed servicer. So they aren't required to send, like, the TILA forms, the goodbye letters, and that sort of thing. So then the responsibility falls back on me, or the person that sold us the paper. But since we're the professional in the business, right, we obviously know what to do. It's quicker for us to do it. So we just provide that as part of closing, and it's kind of packaged into the closing cost, if you will, of what the expense is to do that. But you have to get it right. So the new servicing company will want things done a certain way, and then you have to make sure that you adhere to that. So this one of the servicers that we use is really good, but they're also very picky, I guess, or I guess they're really strict on following these certain guidelines. And if you don't have XYZ, ABC, MNLOP done before the transfer date, then they're not going to approve of the transfer letter that you send to the borrower. So you kind of have to go through these hoops, and it's like it's pushing and pulling and tugging and with the previous owner, the previous owner's escrow company, the new servicer, and then getting these pieces together. So it can be very time consuming, especially when you're doing 5 at a time. If you can imagine, to make sure like everybody's got their ducks in a row. On top of that wrinkle, Richard, this certain escrow company that was collecting the payments for these 5 loans that we bought, they have an exclusive right to collect the payment from the borrower. So in order to break that exclusivity with the borrower has to sign and notarize a special document that says, I want to release the servicing of this note from you to XY, the new servicer. So there was another layer that I had to go through and make sure that all those borrowers got into, like, let's say a title company or someplace close to where they could execute that document. So that actually took, 3 or 4 weeks to get all that stuff lined up and all the information that the new servicer needed. And so the transfer service actually took, I want to say, closer to 50 to 60 days, as opposed to, typically we would get this done in like 3 or 4 weeks as for the transfer service. So those are the things that kind of can delay things. You also have to keep in mind there's payments that are probably coming in and out of this process, meaning I got 5 loans. They're going to be making a payment at some point. Where are they making the payment to? And then wherever they made that payment to, if it wasn't with my new servicer, well, I got to go find it and collect it, or at least tell somebody like, hey, just forward the payment to me. So right there, you can see there's 5 loans with five different issues and characteristics about it that you have to monitor. So that window of time from when you buy the loan to the next 60 days is really important that you stay on top of your game. Now, I haven't even mentioned going over insurance, but that process as well, we have to update all the insurance policies that we are the new mortgage holder.
So a small example of that would be and it goes into the if you're not really careful, it falls through the cracks category.
Oh yeah,
that's a technical term, of course, but
yeah.
So I bought a note recently that was serviced by XYZ servicer. They wanted the tax bills sent to them so that they could escrow for the property taxes. When it was transferred over to the new servicer, they did not want the tax documentation sent to them. They want it sent directly to the borrower, and then they would go to the county directly to find out what the tax bills were. Mm-hmm. And what happened in that process was that somehow somebody said, all right, since we're doing it that way, that means that we, the new servicer, are not going to collect, are not being requested to collect taxes and or escrow for taxes and insurance. And when I finally realized this, because tax bills were coming due, I now have to pay a $175 fee to get the new servicer that I would not have to have paid earlier to start collecting taxes and insurance. Little things like that.
Yeah, there's always these situations that we find out that kind of annoy you, that there's not a blanket policy across all servicers. You really have to understand what's going on and kind of dive deep into it. So I wouldn't have known about these borrowers having to sign a release form to release them from an escrow company, having the sole right to collect from them.
I've never heard of that.
And unless you either read the entire agreement, the servicing agreement that person had, or they just hold up their hand and say, hey, look, you don't have the right to collect the payments until they release the servicing. So you would have to get an account with us in order, to start receiving the payments from the borrower. So it's just good to understand, especially when you're dealing with owner finance and seller finance paper. If it's not being serviced by a licensed professional loan servicer, you may have to go through some extra hoops and wrinkles in order to get this thing to be serviced with a licensed servicing company. Most people are buying loans where the loan is already serviced professionally, and so that's not an issue. They just do all the talking back and forth, and it's easy. And you, as the new note owner, don't have to worry about it. But when you buy the mom and pop paper, it's just another wrinkle, which is why, we have to buy it at a bigger discount, because we know Justin's going to spend a lot more time trying to figure all this stuff out and getting it boarded with the new servicer. But once it's boarded, hey, it's set and forget it. These performing loans, do great. But it's that interim process, Richard, those 60 days. It's really important to document what you're doing, have a good checklist, making sure you're pushing and pulling, because this stuff, as you know, Richard, can drag on for 3, 4, 5, 6 months sometimes, because you
Yeah,
just
and I
forget a
think
step.
you're much better at keeping track of that stuff than I am. I keep ticklers and whatnot on it, but it just drives me nuts. I have to go back, like you say, when it goes on for 3 or 4 months. I have to go
Yeah.
back. I have to look at my notes. I have to
Yeah.
see what the issue was, because you don't have just one of these. You've got 5 of them up in the air all
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah. So this business can be really active really quickly in performing loans when you're buying in bulk like that. If you're just buying one at a time, it's usually not as much work to do. If you're buying a non-performer, obviously you better be paying attention to what's going on, because you can lose out on your ROI pretty quickly, and things can go on for 8-10 months and you not realize I could have solved that 6 months ago. So that's the reason why we pay attention, and we have a good process and a clean process, so that nothing falls through the crack easily. I'll say not everything we catch, but it's definitely we have a good safety net there.
Yeah, and I mean, in the example that I gave with collection of the taxes, the borrower came back and said, "Look, I thought you guys were doing all that. So
Yeah,
since you weren't, you pay them." And I'm going, wait a minute.
yeah. Look, when you're the note owner, you got to take the horse by the reins, and you got to just command the ship. You got to know exactly what party A is doing and party B is doing, and either be the middleman or to say, "Look, the receivables are this, your deliverables are that. Make it happen, and then check up on it and follow up to make sure it's being done at the timeline that you need it done by."
Right. That's the advantage of investing in something like a fund,
Yeah,
because all that's taken care of for
it's
you.
all done for you.
Right.
It's the white glove treatment, as our friend Drew would say.
Done for you.
Done for you.
Hmm.
I've got some other interesting stories that I wanted to share, if that's okay.
Sure.
So we buy loans that have problems with them on purpose, because we know we can get a good discount for them. And we also know that we've been through enough to where we can work our way out of them, and we feel pretty confident.
Hmm.
We had bought several loans like this. Some of them are performing, but they have problems with it. And some of them are non-performing, and they got problems with it. A couple of the ones that are non-performing that we've bought, we've had really good success with them. And it's because of the story, that's the underlying story to it.
Hmm.
And so we look at the traditional ways to do due diligence on a note, and we see things and we go, okay, we can assess the value of it, and we think it's this. But hey, that's great. But let's look at the other emotional factors here. Let's look at what the communication has been like with the borrower. What is the borrower side of the story? What is the lender side of the story? And how can we see this going further? And what do we see as the propensity for them to start repaying again, or them to pay off the loan?
Give us
So,
an example.
so Richard and I, we've mentioned this before in the broadcast. We've had a lender and borrower who are actually relatives to each other, close relatives to each other, and they basically had like a falling out. So over the course of many years, they've kind of had this, let's just call it this dislike towards each other. But one of them was the lender and one of them was the borrower. So obviously the lender is trying to get payment from the borrower, and the borrower is saying, I just don't want to give you payment because I don't like you. So that's the truth of the matter. The lender is, hard pressed not to go through a foreclosure action because it's their relative. And quite frankly, they just see it as this doom and gloom type of process. And they just don't want to deal with that and have all the family drama. So they kind of let things go. we kind of jump into the picture and we're like, hey, we'll buy this note. And we dig into the story and we're like, wait a minute, this person hasn't been paying. Wait a minute, they're this far behind, this and that. So I go and interview the borrower and say, hey, look, we're thinking that we're in the process of buying this debt that you owe to your family member, XYZ person. We're just letting you know, and we wanted to confirm with you, like, this is what they're telling us the balance owed is and all that stuff. And they said, oh, that sounds right, but no, I think I've made these XYZ payments. And we would say, hey, great. Just show us you made those payments. And then when we buy this debt, that's going to be your new balance. That's great for you. You know, we'll take care of it. Okay, that's awesome. Don't hear from them. Don't hear from them. Don't hear from them. Finally hear from them. I don't have any receipts of that stuff. Mr. or Mrs. Borrower, you understand that we can't just go off your word. We have to have hard evidence. Do you have a check stub? Do you have something in your bank that shows a draft? No, I don't have a checking account. Okay. I don't know any other way that we can prove this. She's like, yeah, I don't know either. Okay. Well, unfortunately, you know, when we take over this debt, it's going to be this. Do you accept that? Yeah, I guess I have to because I have no way to prove it. Okay, great. We're on the same page. Sign something. Awesome. So we buy the debt. We get it boarded with our servicer. We start communicating to them, and they are more than willing to do a modification with us. So we go through and we say, hey, look, you know, you owe this much money. You have this much in interest arrearage. You have this much in your late charges. You are behind in your taxes. You don't have insurance on the property, or you're lapsed on insurance. Like, how are we going to fix all this stuff? And so we come up with a solution. They ended up being a landlord to this property, and they were actually renting it out. So we said, how much rent are you getting from this thing? Blah, 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 $700-800, whatever. Okay. So if we if we assume that when the renter makes the payment and you take that entire payment and you put it towards this loan, this is what's going to happen. Within a year of doing that, you're going to basically wipe out all this back arrears that you owe. And then you'll start having your normal payment of, I don't know what it is, Richard, like $400 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have free cash flow and you'll be all caught up. Does that sound good to you? Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, because I love the property. I like the tenant there. I want to make money on it. Sure, no problem. Boom. Year later, things are going great. The borrower's paying like clockwork. They're making all the payments they were supposed to. Everybody's happy. And then we make a really great return because of our extra layer of due diligence that we found out about the story of what was going on.
So the real story was going on was it was two siblings, and they got into a squabble. One had made a loan to the next, and when they got into the squabble, one said, "Okay, screw you. I'm not going to make my payments anymore." And then it went downhill from there, right?
Yeah. So the person's more than willing to make the payments. They have the money to make the payments. They just didn't want to make the payments to that person.
Right.
New person steps in, and then boom, there you have it. Things change.
Right.
Everything changes. The emotion changes. Everything.
So we should create a whole new category of loan and call them spite notes.
Spite notes. There you go.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Spite notes.
They're not being paid out of spite. Right.
Around the same time, we bought another loan that was a very similar situation where there was a condo, and the person, we weren't sure if they lived there or not, but they hadn't been making payments and they've been going dark on this person for a while. This lender was fed up with it, and they said they didn't want to deal with it anymore. They don't know what's going on. Can you buy it? Blah, blah, blah. So we look at it. We bought it. We didn't have any idea of what the person was doing. As soon as we bought it, we boarded it with our servicer. We sent out information, and the red flag came up, and they said, hey, wait a minute. You know, I don't know what's going on. But I had been in jail for so many months, let's just say 8 to 10 months. Okay, well, that makes sense. You know, they've been in jail. They probably can't communicate with anybody. So, and they said, yeah.
And why was he in jail?
We don't know. So we communicated with them and said, hey, look, do you want to sign a modification so you can get caught up? Yeah, same thing. I got money. I want to put more payments down towards this mortgage. I actually want to pay it off quicker. So what do I need to do? So we laid out the back taxes, the insurance stuff, the interest arrearage account, said, here you go. Here's everything that's owed on it. Here's your payment. You know, start spreading this out over a couple of months, and boom, we don't have to go through foreclosure on you. Sure enough, the guy, within 3 months of us taking this over and having it boarded, started making these large payments to get everything paid off, and they're 100% caught up and paying like clockwork now. And boom, once again, we make a great purchase because we just, looked at the underlying situation. We saw that there was an opportunity to just start foreclosure to see if we can get the person to respond to us. Sure enough, they did. We found out the story, and then there you have it.
So we didn't really, in that case, we didn't really know if he would make the payments or not, but it was a win-win for us either way, right?
Yeah, it was a win-win. We saw an opportunity, and I said, hey, look, we don't really know the borrower story because we couldn't reach out to them like we did in the other scenario. We could reach out to that borrower and find out the story. This one, we said, yeah, look, if we get this property back, it seems to have great value. It seems to be in great condition. It doesn't appear that anybody lives there. Turns out somebody was living there. It's just, they just didn't have it was hard to determine if they actually lived there. Let me step back a little bit, because this was a condo in a condo building. So the photographer can only take a picture of like kind of the front window, if you will. And it was an upstairs condo. So they couldn't really tell, but from their point of view, they're like, well, it looks like somebody's living there, or it looks like someone's not living there. I think it's what they told us, someone is not living there.
Right. So for us, if we had to foreclose, and I should say, I don't think, I know we may not know exactly what the fellow was in jail for, but I don't think it was like armed robbery or anything like that. It wasn't a, really bad.
No. I don't think it was anything.
Yeah, some domestic issue or something like that. But so the analysis for us is that if he starts to pay, we've bought this at such a deep discount that it's a home run. And if we have to foreclose and sell it, it's a home run.
Yeah.
Right.
We were very well protected because of the motivation of the previous lender.
Right.
They had it. We were in the right spot at the right time. And we said, yeah, we'll buy it. It was a very low valued note. I want to say we paid under $20,000 for it, and maybe it had $40,000, $50,000 in debt owed on it still,
Right.
adding up all the arrearages and everything. So we, after paying that money, we obviously had to put money back into it, but then we were reimbursed pretty quickly for what the borrower needed to pay us back for. So it turned out to be very nice. So we took a gamble on it, an educated guess, and said, hey, look, this looks like a good opportunity. Like you said to Richard, either way, if he starts paying, hey, great. If he doesn't start paying, we can foreclose quickly because we think it's vacant. Hey, great. We're able to move on this action pretty quickly.
So the key on both of those is to ask the right questions and try and get under the covers and really find out what's going on, right?
Yeah. Sometimes the previous lenders on the seller finance paper that we go after, they don't tell the truth all the time.
Can you
And
imagine?
we definitely find out during the pay history what the truth is, because when they have to put, pen to paper, so to speak, and they have to prove to us like, hey, here's the checks, here's the bank accounts, here's the receipts of these payments. Because we ask these questions, like, you have to prove the payment, otherwise the payment didn't happen.
Right. So another thing we're doing, though, I think is, I'm going to say we're taking advantage, but I don't really mean that in a negative factor way, is that we're taking advantage of the fact that a lot of these lenders are not sophisticated, and they're just tired of dealing with this, whatever
Yeah.
the situation is, whether it's the sister, it's it's the guy that was my best friend that I made a loan to, and now the relationship is soured, and so he's not paying me, and he's jerking me around, or whatever it is. And we're able to step in as the more professional group. And a lot of times the borrower will pay attention to us more than they would that other begrudged party.
So both of those lenders and those two scenarios that I talked about, those two actual real applications that we did, they both said, you're never going to get the borrower to pay you.
Right.
They both said that.
Right.
And I knew at that point when they said that,
Mhm.
that we had a good opportunity to figure out something.
Right. Right. The fun stories.
Yeah. We got plenty more of them, but that is about all the time we got for today. This is episode number 12 on the Be the Bank podcast, brought to you by American Note Buyers. We got Justin Bogard and Richard Thornton on the call today. And for all of you out there, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, American Note Buyers on YouTube. And you can see the video stream of this podcast as well, and all the ones before it.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
Well then, see y'all later.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Be the Bank. We hope you learned something from today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us. Plus, check out our channel on YouTube. And follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Be The Bank and on Instagram at Be The Bank Podcast. Be The Bank is sponsored by American Note Buyers. Thanks again for listening.